Thank you, James. Good morning. My name is Jane Prusakova, and I'm here to talk about ethics in software development. I'm a software developer, an architect, a team lead. I've also worked for a lot of small companies, which means I get to consider all other business aspects of what we do. So this is a talk that came up as a hot topic when we work with students, and it turns out a lot of big, huge companies like $15 billion Talos are concerned that software developers who show up to work on their first day do not know what ethics is. It's not part of computer science curriculum. It's not really being discussed. Do I have any philosophy majors here? Anyone studied philosophy? Thank you. Anyone had ethics or professional ethics as part of a regular college course? Very cool. I didn't. I did study philosophy. So what is a code of conduct? We do have a bunch of professions that their licensing comes with a code of conduct. When you decide to become a doctor, you have to sign an oath or take an oath. When you become a professional engineer, you have a professional code of conduct which you can be sued for not following. As software developers, we don't have it. It's kind of free for all. It's up to us to define what kind of ethics we want to uphold, what kind of ethical standard we want to be measured again. So this talk doesn't have a lot of answers. I'm not going to tell you how to be good. We'll talk about things that happen and things we want to be concerned about, and it's also about questions. What questions do you want to ask yourself and your organization, and how do you judge what's ethical or not? So I hope you all read Jeff Atwood at least occasionally. It's one of the more popular software blogs, but I'll give you a second. This is from an old post. That was me. I don't know if that was me. Huh? Oh, this is real, right? We wake up, we want to do a good job. This is our ethics every morning. But moral questions genuinely are hard, and a lot of the time, we don't know. We don't know if what we are doing as a product, if what we are doing as a company or as a community is truly good or bad. Unintended consequences can be far-reaching, but even intended consequences are not always obvious. And the scary part is the stuff we work on affects millions of people. A $1 billion company is 2 people and a mobile app, building a mobile app. I'm using $1 billion as a size, but you can consider a small app can have millions and billions of users. You are affecting lives we are affecting lives in small ways, but those small ways can turn out to be fairly profound. So I started looking for a code of ethics. This is Association for Computer Machinery, which is an old American organization, but it's kind of at the root of the IT industry. It's old. The code of ethics is old. We are not held responsible by it, but it exists. And this is what American technologists are supposed to consider right and proper. Contribute to society and human well-being. Avoid harm. Be honest and trustworthy. Give proper credit for intellectual property. And respect the privacy of others. I bet the last one was added more recently than the rest of it. Does something like this exist in Canada? Do you know? Yeah, it does. And this looks more recent. CIPS, Canada's Association of IT Professionals, mandates protecting the public interest and maintaining integrity, demonstrating competence and quality of service, maintaining confidential information and privacy, avoiding conflict of interests, and upholding responsibility. This is a catch-all. What is upholding responsibility? What are we responsible for? I'll be talking more about the American one in the talk that follows, but they're not that different. They are all about being a good person. Any objections to any of this? This is what it means not to have a well-defined argument. You can't bring an objection. There is nothing concrete about this. Be a good person. Be honest. We all learned it when we were there in preschool. It hasn't changed since then. Give proper credit. Of course you give proper credit for intellectual property. That's what we built. We are in the business of building intellectual property. Respect privacy of others. This is a new one. We don't know how to think about it. In America, it's a free-for-all right now. In Europe, we are trying to take steps. I think Canada is working on taking steps in the right direction as well. At least you can have a conversation there. But avoid harm to others, isn't that trivial? Turns out it's not. Okay. I took a bunch of articles and put words in the word cloud, and this is what came up with. Facebook, Uber, data, follower, Google, anti-Semitic, in-game, fake, dropped content, responsible, allegations. IT industry may declare itself to be ethical, but they're not. If you are looking at the papers, there could be there is stuff that is scary. I don't know about you. It makes me go, I didn't know that, and I'm glad I'm not part of that. But a lot of people are part of that, and this is not typically questions we ask in the interview. What scandal are you hoping not to be part of? The culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior, by its leaders, or the worst behavior the leaders are agreeing to tolerate. Has anyone heard that? Do you believe that? Culture used to be defined by posters on the wall. It's not. We are not looking at the walls. We are looking at people, and we are finally starting to notice that what people do is more important than what people say. So technology and its consequence. This is an interface of a software product used by nurses in too many hospitals to calculate drug dosages. This is not used for dispensing. Dispensing is a whole different ball of yarn. This is what you need to put in to figure out a correct dose of medicine for someone with given parameters. The reason it came up in my search is someone died because a nurse at the end of your shift, at the end of your 24-hour shift, tried to use this and came up with a number that was 38.5 times allowed dosage. The person died of something that shouldn't be lethal, of something that wasn't lethal, of a drug that was fairly lightly regulated because it wasn't considered to be dangerous. 38 the dosage was suggested by the software 38 plus times what's normal. This is not a bug. Somebody built that, approved it, and shipped that. This is what the company considered well-done software. How many of those are out there? Not just for drug dosage calculations, but for other things that we do. It kind of scares me that this is somebody's normal. But nurses have to go through this every day. A lot of other professionals have to go through interfaces like this every day because that's the software we adopted. and that's the software someone built and decided that was good enough. This is now old Volkswagen emission standard. One day, a new project happened. How do we fool the software? Detect the test mode, produce results that are not quite what's coming from the hardware, and post that. And the engineers said, yeah, we can build that. They'll say we may not have had a choice. We say we may not have had a choice. We'll be fired and somebody else will be doing that. But it's still our choice. It turns out a lot of companies did that. That's not just Volkswagen. Volkswagen happened to be caught first. How do you know if you're not building something like this? You have to ask questions. I work with a lot of younger people. We hire out of college. They don't know what the product is about. They never ask themselves that question, and it's not a regular part of education we offer them when they join. They may figure it out earlier than the rest of us, but they need to be given the proper tools. So, ethical concerns, and I'm trying to make a list here, but it's far from comprehensive. Evil software. Do we build software that is likely to do harm? Intentionally. We don't want to think that, but I bet that happens sometimes. And market occasionally wants that. Data. Where is this confidentiality questions come in? What to publish, but more importantly, what to keep. As an engineer, I hate to delete data, to make it completely unretrievable. I tend to retire it and think that maybe I want to go back to it eventually. This is not an ethical course of action. The data that is not personally identifiable in 2018 is likely to be personally identifiable 20 years from now, just because we have more of it and because we have better algorithms to connect it to personally identifiable sets. And finally, if we are storing it rather than throwing it away, it can get hacked, and it might get hacked. And is this a risk that the users are signing up for? How is it disclosed? Bugs. Oh, this is great. Do we build the next shiny feature, or do we fix bugs? This is an ethical dilemma, and this goes to the Canadian Code of Conduct more than American. What does quality of service mean? What does competence mean? If we're delivering software with bugs, once they've been identified, do we go to the top of the queue, or do we go to the bottom? And quality. A bunch of companies I've talked to expect users to do the testing. It's not everywhere, but it's not uncommon either. How much effort are we putting into test? How well do we know what the code actually does? The question we ask students when we work on very senior project is, what can possibly go wrong with your project? How much harm can be done? A few years ago, United didn't fly for 3 days because of IT error. 3 days, people sat in their respective airports where they expected to spend half an hour to maybe a few hours between flights and didn't go anywhere because United didn't know what to do. All the tickets, all the reservation, all the flight crew schedules, everything was inaccessible because software just went poof. Do you want to be part of this team? I work with a lot of people who worked for United. It was an IT error, not necessarily a software development error, but somebody made those decisions. Is it ethical to go without backup? How long should it take us to have backup, how much effort should we be putting into this? Those are moral questions, not business questions. What will happen if your software becomes unavailable? How much your users are going to be harmed? Questions. So going back to honest and trustworthy, something we learned back in kindergarten and preschool. You remember this Barbie. It was a hot toy a few years ago. It was listening to children and conversing with them. It turned out all the audio that it was picking up went to processing in other countries. There was no governance on privacy. It was in the homes. It was listening to what the children said, what the parents said, the conversations you have on Christmas morning under the tree in the privacy of your own home, conversations you have in your car. Software snoops, hardware devices snoops. What is the harm? Well, we don't know where this data ends up. We don't know who is listening. We don't know what happens to this data. Should we trust this technology? It depends. Sometimes these listening devices are in public spaces, and then they help, and it's great. The question is, if a Samsung TV is supposed to wake up on a code word, and the bug is it wakes up too often and picks up too much, that's not symmetrical for it to waking up too late and missing some direction to the TV. Which bug do you work on first? Give proper credit for intellectual property. I know everyone here is very ethical and you pay for your software. No one is running unlicensed copy of anything. So what's the cost of software piracy? Because software piracy does exist. There are developers who haven't made it in today. And a lot of them are using unlicensed tools. Some of them using unlicensed operating systems. Microsoft claims a lot of piracy as far as their products. So what's the cost of software piracy? Well, I don't know about poor developers' livelihood. I don't know if anyone with access to development on iOS is actually that poor. Millions of dollars? Maybe. Or maybe nothing. Maybe Microsoft can afford it and they build it into the price of the products. It's your choice. It's a moral question. Yes, you should pay for the software you use commercially. Is it okay to use student versions if you're just out of college? You have to decide for yourself. Moral questions. I didn't promise any answers. It's something to consider. How would you like to be treated? If you're putting out something for sale, do you want people to think about it as something, as a project to hack the paywall? Or would you like them to pay you first and not even consider other options? So this is my take on what is actually ethical. You have to pay attention what you're using. A lot of development teams will bring in open source libraries or free code, not free code, and not read the licensing terms. Licenses are different. You have to pay attention. You have to abide by licenses terms, at least in commercial products. Your personal software is a little bit of a gray area. But more importantly, contribute to the community. Realize that it's not every man for themselves. We are part of this global community. We are building the infrastructure together. We are building the ecosystem together. You can have a walled one, like bigger companies try to do, but developers working on GitHub are part of a global community. So be part of that, be conscious of that, help others and give credit to others. Ethics of software product. Do we have software products that are intended to harm people? Probably, definitely. Uh, Twitter trolls, people are doing active harm to others by exposing private information, by posting threats, by governing public outrage to in response to personal opinions. That's obvious harm. Is it okay for software to extend privileges to some over others? We seem to think yes, but also we don't get to consider this. Is it okay that you get a lot more software targeted at you, a lot more options targeted at you if you are young, educated, and can afford it? Poor people have less services, including free services. The scary one here is video jail visitation. Do you know what it is? Anyone used Skype? Or other video chatting services? They're great if you have to talk to someone across the world. They are not as good as being in the same room, but they're pretty great. Video jail visitation looks similar, except it's a little bit more secure. The problem with this is people who find themselves in jail, they count on human contact. They really need to be in the room with their friends and relatives and whoever is willing to put in the effort to get there and to visit. Because the software is available, you are no longer allowed to visit in person. So some rights are being taken away because this software exists. I don't want to be part of building this product. I want to build good, secure products, including for communication, but I really don't want to be part of this business model. There are developers working on that. It's a fairly big company that does that. Do you want to join it? It's up to you. Fake news advertising. There are platforms that very smart people work on that will allow you to spam millions of people with unwanted messages. There are platforms that allow to disseminate fake news with little traceability to where those news are coming from. Someone is putting a lot of very good technical thought into this product. There is a market for it. Is it ethical to work on this? Everybody has to make their own decision. This talk is about making this decision explicit. Think about it. Don't blindly jump into the highest paying offer. Encryption. Should we have encrypted communication, or should everything be in the clear? The government, well, at least the American government, has made a case that by using encryption, they are enabling terrorists. We are making it, by having privacy of communication, we are making it easier for bad people to get together and make evil plans. You can agree or not agree with an argument, but it exists. Do you want to work on encryption? You have to make a choice. And then there are questions of how do we work with people together? Is having diversity in the team worth something? Is it ethical to turn people away because they don't look like us, because they are not like us, because they don't have a computer science degree, we don't come from the same privileged background, because we don't do happy hours? It does take an adjustment to switch to a mindset where we want different points of view. It makes life harder. But is it ethical to gate access to the industry to people who don't look like the rest people already in? Okay, simpler questions. Diversity is hard. Simpler question, is it okay to make people work overtime? Anyone as a manager had to require a team to come in on the weekend? Not a thing?
In Ontario, that's not a choice. We're considered the same as doctors. All
What does it mean?
Be asked to work 60 hours easily.
Oh,
In Ontario, if you're in IT and asked to work overtime, it's legally allowed and you're not paid extra outside of the normal overtime.
right. The question is not whether it's legally allowed. The question is it ethical? The expectation of a work week is 40 hours, right? 60 hours a week happen, unfortunately. But when you sign up for a job, you are being paid for 40 hours a week. You're not being paid extra for overtime. Yeah, it is legally allowed, and we don't get overtime in the United States either. And there are a lot of industries and companies that expect extra hours, but is it ethical? I feel bad asking people to work overtime. I don't like to be asked overtime. Even less I want I want to be asked to work on a Saturday, because that means not just working overtime, but coming in at the time of your choosing, right? Sometimes you're pushed to work extra, but at least you have some choice on how you're doing that. I don't think it's, every so often I'll be in planning meetings where the project is being planned with overtime. We are going to set up the timeline so that the team will have to work every Saturday between now and 3 months down the road. I don't think it's ethical. I don't think it's fair. You can decide differently. And then there are jobs that will tell you up front, this is a startup, we need to get this out because funding or something else. This is overtime for at least that much time. Do you take it? It depends, but at least you've been warned. Hopefully, all of us have a choice. Is it acceptable to keep around a high-performing person who is a bully? There are practical implications. There are studies that show that not having social security on a team is a detriment to the team's work. But at the same time, there are people who are perceived as high-performing. Sometimes they put in a lot of hours, sometimes they are just considered brilliant, who will put down other people on the team. As a manager, as a team member, as a leader in your industry, do you step up and say, this is unacceptable? It's a question. It's not obvious. What if it costs us delivery time? What if it costs us customers and funding and other concerns? Ethics isn't free. So here's my question to you before we get into more questions. What ethical dilemmas are you facing? Do you have any? Do you consider the scope of your product and your company and your team and think this is not just not perfect? This could be breaching my personal ethics. Is being expected to work 60 hours per week okay? Does it rise to the level of it's not ethical to ask? Whether you agree to it or not is your personal life decision, like life work. But to ask other people, is this fair? Is it ethical? To plan for it, is it ethical? This is all I got.